This is part 2 of a seminar I gave at the 2015 Washington Sportsman Show in Puyallup, Washington. And we're talking about drift fishing and float fishing beads. And it's an introduction to those who are new to fishing beads. Bead fishing has grown in popularity and is very effective for steelhead and salmon. Here in part 2, I'll finish up talking about drift fishing setups, including pegging beads, bead size, scent, and drift fishing the water effectively. Okay, here's a product. I think this has cost about $1, maybe it was $2, I don't know. It's called the Peg-It 2, okay? The Peg-It 2. Comes in a package of 15 pieces. You slide that into the bead, grab some tension, you trim it off, okay? You can go with these if you like. Here's one for you. Heavy bands, okay? Heavy beads uses the heavy bands. Now, in order to use this, it's like a flat rubber band basically, but you got to get it into the bead hole. You need a tool. And it took me 6 stores to find the tool. I actually got this at a Sportsman's warehouse, okay? This works, guys. This works, and it works very consistently because you'll take the tool, you'll slide it into the bead, you'll put the heavy band, they even have video to show you how to do it. You stretch the heavy band on your hand, you put it around, you pull it through. It really secures it, okay? I don't use that either. I use wedgies, Bomac wedgies, okay? This is what I use. I use them for a few different things in the boat, and I've got tons of them. And really, all you're doing on the wedgie is when you open the package, unless someone picked up my wedgies. It looks like they did. Let's open a new package. So the wedgies come out, if you haven't seen these little guys. They look just like that. You just grab one, you pull it off, you take the small end, you insert it into the bead, and you pull. And so when you pull it, it ends up looking like this. Okay? So the bead's on the leader. You slide the wedgie into the bead, and you pull it until it's flush on one side. You take your nippers, not your teeth, and you clip the other end. You want it to be smooth. Okay? Smooth on both sides. Right? So that's what I use, but you have choices. You don't have to do it the way I do it. You can use the toothpick. Please don't use the spearmint. Now, here's the idea behind pegging a bead, okay? When the bead is pegged, and a lot of the guys that are center pin fishing, even the guys that are using fly rods, and they're fishing beads, the concept here is that the fish is down there in the water, and it grabs that bead and inhales it. And when it does, when it inhales that bead, you feel that when you set that hook, boom, it pulls that hook into their lip. If you're fishing areas and you've got a really good wild steelhead population, specifically late season, right toward the end of your hatchery return, you're gonna have a lot of wild fish in. Wild fish tend to hit more aggressively and really suck that in. What guys are trying to prevent is getting this hook into the gills of a wild fish, okay? So pegging works, and you want to peg 1 to 2 inches from the hook. 1 to 2 inches, okay? But do you have to? No, because I've been fishing the beads, and I've been drift fishing them on the skycomish and the cowlets. And I'm fishing them just like this. They're right down on the hook. And what you'll find is that these beads, when they're in the water, they'll not always stay right on the hook. They're kind of here and there, maybe 3, 4, or 5 inches within the hook. So those fish hit, you're still setting the hook, still getting in the lip. But if you're fishing some wild, some areas where the wild fish are, like, late season skycomish, January, you're getting those wild fish back, you might want to peg the bead. You really need to play it by ear. But do you have to? No. And this technique works for coho just as well as it works for steelhead. Okay? Works for coho just as well as it works for steelhead. Now, let's talk real quick about leader length, and then I'll touch on the hook. So, on leader length, if you guys have seen me talk about drift fishing in the past, you'll hear me talk about my leader length is dependent on the visibility of the water, right? Clear water, I'd consider clear water 5 feet or better on visibility. You want to fish a 6-foot leader. And you'll hear me talk when I'm talking about drift fishing eggs, stuff like that. I'm not fishing anything longer than a 6-foot leader. But if I've got 2 or 3 feet of visibility, I may actually shorten my leader. You're fishing beads, you want to fish a minimum of a 6-foot leader when you're drift fishing. Don't shorten it, okay? Don't shorten it. Look at what you buy when you buy your fly tippets for fly fishing. What are you getting there? If you're fishing an 8-weight rod, you might be fishing an 8, 9-foot leader, right? Okay, the concern is, and I've had guys say, well, aren't I flossing fish? Not when you're fishing beads, and here's why. Because of the neutral buoyancy of this bead, you need that leader length so that that bead can float and just work natural like a single egg in the water. If you shorten this up to like 3 feet, you're just not going to, that egg or this bead is not going to be natural in the water. When I'm in a drift boat or when I'm in a boat drift fishing or free drifting beads, I'm fishing a 6-foot leader. I don't fish them any longer. But there's guys on the bank that are consistently fishing 8-foot leaders. Okay? And the only difference is they're fishing them on this instead of grabbing a fly rod and fishing an 8-foot leader on that. Okay? You need the length for the neutral buoyancy. Okay? These fish are going to hit these things like you can't believe. Size of hooks and size of beads. I fish consistently a number 4 hook. Number 4. I fish the vision hooks. They're fine wire. They're a little lighter. If you fish the Gamakatsu or the owner hooks, you'll find they're not the finer wire. They're a little heavier. You might have to play with the size of bead that you fish. You could safely go down to the store or order online and get a size 10, a 10 millimeter bead, and start fishing. The size ranges are from 6 millimeter to 14 millimeter, depending on colors and styles. But a 10 will get you started, okay? Other beads on the market. Heavy beads. The name is telling you what it is. It's heavy, okay? Float fish. Don't go drift fish a heavy bead. It won't work. You're going to cast and bloop, oh, I'm stuck. And you'll get the same result if you do it a second time. So don't fish the heavy beads. If you want to float fish them, go ahead. Trout beads. These are the blood dot eggs. They're a trademark product of trout beads. Trout beads tend to be a little on the heavy side. I fished a few, I didn't really care for it. That's why I fished the Steelhead beads. Okay, so steelheadbeads.com. So I get the question, so if heavy beads are good for float fishing, why don't you fish them under floats and you fish those for drift fishing? Well, I don't want multiple beads in my boat. I save gear. I don't want to accidentally have a heavy bead end up on a drift fishing rig because sometimes people tie their own gear up, right? So I fish one. And that one works for both systems. Okay? Any questions so far? Right up to there? No? Okay. Should you scent your bead? Yes. Want to use like a gel type scent, right? Procure makes some great gels. I like Procure. Smelling jelly is great. But if you use this smelling jelly, don't put it in your pocket. Your body heat will make it really, not so sticky. I like to keep it in my cooler, my bait cooler, or I put it in my sounder box where it's not going to get that hot. But smelling jelly is good, right? It'll stick on there. I scent my Dick Knight spoons, so I'm absolutely going to scent my beads, right? Then I'll maybe run a little scent on the leader right there, okay? So you're walking down to the river. It's time to go do a little drift fishing. Let's talk about where to cast and how you approach your water, okay? For those of you that were in here, when Scott spoke, he talked about starting at the top of your drift, whether you're in a boat or you're fishing on the bank. Start at the top, work your way down. You're able to hit multiple seams. If something doesn't work, keep working your way down, come back and fish that water with another technique or something different. But let me go one step further and say, don't just walk right down into the water. I think that's a mistake, right? Because if you're coming down to the river and you're pretty much walking flat and you get to the river, does the river just suddenly drop off into deep water? No, it's got that gradual slope into the water, right? Usually, you've got a shallow and a deeper side. Where does steelhead like to be? 2 to 6 feet of water, pretty typically, right? Unless maybe you're on the Columbia River fishing steelhead. Water depth is going to be a little deeper, right? But typical steelhead water is 2 to 6 feet. So, wouldn't it be prudent that when you get down to the river to fish the stuff that you would normally walk into up to here, up to your waist? So I had a guy, he's standing on a gravel bank. It's a great gravel bar to fish. Drift by it. He's the only guy out there. We catch a fish right in front of him, like right there. We go down, we fish another drift, we come back, here we come again. We hook another fish right in front of him. We do this a total of 3 times. When we came back the 4th time, he was not in the water anymore. And he goes, yeah, I'm probably standing too far in the water, aren't I? I go, well, if you want to catch steelhead, I think they're right there. If you want to get salmon, then you need to be casting over there, right? Way out there in the deep slot, 12 feet of water. We went, we fished some other drifts. By the time I finally came back, guy holds his fish up. Yeah, he's got 2. And guess where he got them? Right there. Are they always right there? No. But it would be prudent to go ahead and fish that water before you get into it. I know we spent $250 on waders. We want to use them. But fish the water first, then get in. So let's pick our water apart real quick. And what I'm about to talk to you about water is going to apply for float fishing. Seams and edges. Seams. Most common seam on a river, it's where faster water meets slower water. And you literally see this line, right? I like to fish the inside slower water edge of that seam. That's where I want to drift my gear through, okay? And if you're free drifting, you can really work that really well, all right? If you're bank fishing, you have to break it down into segments because you're on a swing, right? Your gear is swinging and it's not staying in a straight line out there. It's swinging, it's fanning the area that you're fishing. So you do need to move, if at all possible, when you're drift fishing. Edges. Where do we get edges from? Most common edge that you're going to find on a river comes from our botanical obstructions, the trees. Sun's out, casts shade down onto the river. Those fish will sit right on the inside of that shade line. Okay, it's a good spot to fish. You can also get edges from rocks, drop-offs, ledges. Okay, so don't forget to fish that kind of stuff. Last and most importantly, how do you cast and where do you cast? Okay? So, I'm with you. I'm on the bank. And I'm down at the river. I'm like, this is great. I'm not standing in the water yet, right? Okay. Most guys that I see that haven't figured this out yet are casting up here, trying to drift all of that water there. Guys, it's not going to work. Okay? Just like you lose your Dick Knight spoons because you cast too high in the river, you're going to lose your beads too because you're going to get hung up. Okay? When I get down to the river, I want to start fishing just in front of me. So in order for me to start fishing right here, I need to cast just slightly up. Okay? Drift fishing, not float fishing. We'll get to that in a minute. Just cast slightly up. Now, if I cast just slightly up, I start fishing here. I'm fishing all this water in through here to about right there. So start fishing here, and I'm going to end there. Once I get below there, and the line starts coming closer to me, I'm done. I'm reeling my gear in. I'm burning it back in. Why? Hydraulics of the river. It's pulling everything up. I've got fishing line on here. Everything's coming up off the bottom. We're done. Burn it in. Real fast, cast again. Okay? When you're drift fishing, follow your gear. I know you get down the river, you're excited, we're going to get some fish. You know, you got that rod out there and you're focused and you're going through that drift. You know, 3 hours later, you're like this. You know, your arm starts dropping. Now you're on your phone. Don't do that. Steelheading's tough enough. You want to be more successful? Focus on your line. Follow your main line with your rod. Fish hits, set the hook straight up. Set it up. Don't set it sideways. We're not bass fishing. These fish don't have those extendable mouths like bass and crappie. Set it straight up. Get that hook into the top of their mouth. Okay? Keep tension on the line, but not so much that it's pulling the weight off the bottom. Okay? All right. That wraps it up for part 2. Make sure you move on to part 3, where we'll start the float fishing portion of this seminar. We'll talk about braided lines, floats, knots, weights, and rigging for float fishing steelhead beads.